From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Deck. And most importantly, you are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is time, once again, fellow conspiracy realists, for one of our favorite weekly segments, Listener Mail. We have scoured through the hinterlands of the internet. We've talked with you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Crossroads at Midnight, all the hits, and we've chosen some stories that we feel will be of great interest to the best part of the show, you, specifically you. We're going to talk a lot about our overpopulation episode. We're going to be introduced to a mystery. We're also going to open with just some general updates. So the first part of this segment is going to be, we call it cavalcade, a cornucopia at the very least, of some things that have been on our minds collectively. I think maybe we start out by shouting out a guy that we have spoken with, not all in person, regarding augmented reality and virtual reality. Now, Matt, Noel, you'll recall when last we spoke about this stuff, we were kind of on the fence about a couple of things, but I think we all agreed this metaverse, whatever it ends up being called, is somewhat inevitable. Do we still hold that opinion?
I don't know. I mean, the metaverse has kind of become a bit of a goof in terms of how much Facebook has put their eggs in that particular meta basket, or Metas rather, has put their eggs in that particular meta basket, and doesn't seem like it's going super well. Augmented reality, on the other hand, seems to me like a much more viable version of this kind of experience where you can overlay things, data, scavenger hunts, all kinds of things that incorporate the real world. Because we do still have a real world at this point, which I think is important to consider. Maybe when the world becomes uninhabitable, virtual reality, metaverse situations might be a little more attractive.
Yeah, to that point, I think Meta is a really, really good bet that's not going to pay off until 10 years from now. But when it does pay off, woo, the metaverse is going to be so awesome in that bunker.
In that bunker, yes, well put. Again, this is the reason I'm saying metaverse or whatever it ends up being called is because first to the post does not always mean the person who wins the game, right? Medicinal beverages were all over the U.S. before Coca-Cola became a thing, right? And now it dominates that market. This is primarily a teaser here for a guy we're going to be talking to later this year named Chris Pilcher, a mixed reality artist that we randomly ran into. We're in conversations. This guy has gone through MIT. Actually, he's hanging with MIT right now, and he is combining the world of art, high art, fine art, and performance media with augmented reality. This dude is someone who's going to be very exciting to speak with, and heard back from him recently. So really, this is a call out to our fellow conspiracy realists. Folks, if you have questions about the future of AR, VR, you have thoughts, please send them. Any way you want to contact us, any way you want to contact anybody on the show, let us know, because we're looking forward to this. Assuming the world still spins, I wanted to take some time to give a special shout out here to a longtime listener of the show who goes by Unwilling Stardust. Now, you'll recognize perhaps that handle because Unwilling Stardust reached out to us not too long ago when we were talking about the ongoing protest and instability in Iran. As I last spoke with Stardust. They were going to a protest with no clue about their safety. I want to just read a brief excerpt here, and maybe we can react to this. All right, so Unwilling Stardust says, first of all, according to the Islamic Republic Revolutionary Guards, having an improper hijab will now have serious consequences. The range goes from having to pay a huge fee to having to do many hours of social work, and up to and including, let's just read this. It happened to a prisoner who was a journalist. His social work was writing a 100-page article about why the Islamic Republic is so amazingly good. They can also be imprisoned. Their belongings can be taken away, cars, electronics, especially social media devices, and they are forced out of their city to live in exile, cannot leave the country. The crimes cannot be argued in court. There is no second trial if you attempt to appeal. Many places that have been closed down by the government for allowing women to not wear hijabs are remaining closed. They being the Revolutionary Guard, have arranged new rules to make life difficult for women without hijab. Today at university, says Unwilling Stardust, my hijab was hanging from my neck without putting it on my hair, as if it had just fallen. And not only the person coming to the exam room to examine the students attacked me, verbally abusing me, but also they attempted to ban me from taking the exam or going to school. The professor who defended me was detained. And people are being tracked via their social media as well as their license plates. Gentlemen, this comes on the heels of recent executions for protesters in Iran. Have you guys heard about this?
No, this is news to me.
Yeah, but I'm not following it nearly as closely as you are, Ben. I mean, everything you're saying there, it sounds like a religious revolution, a rebellion against a state that holds religion very close to how it governs.
Right. Again, a theocracy. In a recent episode on how to be a skeptic, we discussed briefly the dangers of theocracy. The United Nations, just a few days ago, came out with an official statement regarding what's going on in Iran, and the United Nations has accused the government of Iran of weaponizing the death penalty. They're saying that they're killing people by example, crushing dissent by frightening the public with public executions. This follows as well with our earlier report of multiple protesters dying in custody. Right now, we can confirm that Tehran, saying Tehran, the capital of Iran, is a lot like saying the White House when you talk about the U.S. government. Tehran has executed 4 people in connection with these demonstrations following, frankly, kangaroo court trials. And this is not us saying it. We're not being political partisans here, folks. The United Nations has confirmed that the trials leading to those 4 executions did not meet the internationally recognized legal minimum for what defines a fair trial. This is not a sustainable situation. At least 17 other protesters have been sentenced to death, according to Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. And this reminds me a lot of of the excellent work our pal Robert Evans did in his series, It Could Happen Here. I keep thinking about these things occurring across the planet now, right? The coup in Peru, or coup attempt that was very underreported, the hilarious attempt in Germany. We're just saying it's hilarious because, come on, it's a decayed aristocrat. And then numerous other coups, including something we talked about quite recently regarding Brazil. And folks, I know we talked about doing an episode on the situation in Iran, a full episode on this. And we have been gathering sources. We've been speaking with protesters who are, in a very real way, risking their lives to contact us. I primarily am bringing this up because I want to check in with you, Matt, and with you, Noel. Do you feel that the West is doing its due diligence in reporting the situation here?
It certainly doesn't seem to be breaking through in the news cycle and in the way that you think a story of this weight and importance should.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, man. I'm torn a little bit, honestly, Ben, because I'm far too aware now of the West's, let's say, interference with other countries when it comes to these kinds of uprisings, right? I mean, often it's the CIA that's getting involved with like a student group or something to make something like this happen in a country that is seen as adversarial to the West or their purposes. It's the skeptical thing, right? I'm still feeling skeptical about it to some extent, and that's probably because I'm so far removed and it doesn't affect me in the way it affects Unwilling Stardust. And that's like a kind of a crappy position to hold for somebody who's going through it like that, the way that I'm sitting here right now and thinking about it. But I don't know, it freaks me out. It makes me feel like other forces that are at play, even though I don't have any way to confirm that.
Yeah, and I'm tempted to agree with you in some regards there, Matt, because one of the things that we have to always remember is that the shadow of U.S. imperialism is a very real specter, right? And it colors the way that you encounter reports of this stuff in the West. Quite recently, there were some Iranian activists who were saying the protests have flipped the switch. It brought to my mind a very important question. At what point does a protest become a revolution? Is it a spectrum, right? Was Occupy Wall Street on the verge of becoming a revolution? I very much doubt it. A revolution is difficult in the United States. But do we have an answer for that? Is there any way for us to say this is no longer a series of protests, this is now actively a revolution or an attempted overthrow?
Well, I mean, go back to January 6th, right? I mean, think about it. Like, what is the line there between protesting and an attempted rebellion, that kind of thing, or an attempted revolution?
Well, and the folks responsible for that event that you're talking about, January 6th, would rather it be viewed as a protest because it doesn't really align with reasonable American political, even like on the most extreme sides. No one wants to be seen as attempting a coup. You know,
yeah.
And the folks who maybe were responsible for that event, it's much better politically for them to say, no, this is a protest and America was built on protests. But again, if there's protests happening they don't like, they'll call those people terrorists or domestic terrorists.
But we have to keep in mind, as much as it is discomforting to think about, it is very beneficial for people on the other side who are opposing that president and the actions to consider it an attempted revolution, right? Mm-hmm. Versus maybe like somewhat organized chaos. So it's like, it's just a tough thing to think about when we're in these realms. But when it comes to Iran, I mean, there's definitely horrendous stuff going down, right?
Hundreds of people have been killed in the protest. Yeah. Murdered by the state.
So, I mean, in the end, does it matter who's pushing the buttons to make the actions happen? I think it does, but again, there's no way to fully tell in the moment.
It's a very, very good question. And also, it's a question that a lot of Western journalists cannot answer on the ground because it's very difficult to get into Tehran. With good reason, because Uncle Sam has multiple times sent people into that area as tourists. So that means no official diplomatic visa, none of that kind of protective measure. Just, hey, we're here to take pictures. Oh, I didn't know that was a nuclear thing. I don't know why they're sending Muppets as tourists, but that's the voice we came up with.
Muppets are the best tourists.
Right. And so it may sound as though there's a bit of a broken record, but we want to do justice to this conversation. to what's happening now in the world that is not being widely reported or is being sanitized in the way it's being reported. The U.S. is an imperialist power. There's no two ways about it. And you can say that and still be a U.S. patriot, right? Not the missile, but the issue is that what's happening here can trigger things in other places. Instability, global instability can be on the rise. It very much is, and it will be, perhaps sooner than we think. At this point, we're going to end this part of this listener mail segment with not just a general update, but a call to action. If you have information on the ground in Iran, if you have experience in the country or with the Islamic Republic, we want to hear from you. Please find us at conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com. Find us on Instagram, Twitter. If there is a more secure platform you prefer, then you can also find me or the show directly on those platforms outlined, and then we can connect on a more secure means of communication. For now, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsors. Please be safe, folks. We'll be right back.
And we're back, and we are jumping to the phone lines. We haven't done this in a while, guys. Here it comes. We've got a message from Krista.
Hey, guys. My name is Krista. I've actually left a message for y'all before and have been a long-time listener. Y'all can use my name in this entire message. I just came across, and it's trending on TikTok, but Max Lohan, he was 13 years old in 2017, created free energy, and he's disappeared. No one knows where he's at, and he can't be found. Any video that I try to watch about, like, the things that he created or invented at all, everything pops up with a virus on it saying that my phone's been infected with a virus if I try to watch a video that he created. Everything's been scrubbed from the internet, and he's gone. He would have been 19 years old right now. But out of nowhere, like, he's just not around anymore. I would love for y'all to, like, speak on this for even a small amount of time. It's scary. And mostly, like, where's Max? Thanks.
Free energy.
Yes, Krista, thank you so much for letting us know about that. This was new to all of us. And you heard Ben say free energy, and that is because over the years, that phrase, right, that term, we've analyzed versions of it a lot, I think I would say, right? We've looked into instances of supposed free energy gathering and use and device creation and all that kind of stuff many times. And I don't know about you guys, but to my knowledge now, I still haven't seen one that would meet the criteria of that phrase.
Yeah, agreed, Matt. In previous episodes and in some previous Strange News and listener mail segments, we have explored a lot of related claims, and at this point, unfortunately, none of those has seemed to reach the threshold of either scale or experimental reproducibility.
Mm-hmm. At least, again, up until this point, right?
Up to this point.
We were unaware of this person, Max Lohan, Loughan, but we are now going to watch a roughly 2.5 minute video. And this comes from KTVN. It's Channel 2 News. It appears to be a major news station. Ben, I think you've confirmed that it's CBS out of Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, confirmed.
So we're going to watch this, and we'll play some excerpts within this podcast, and hopefully we'll all be on the same page. So here we go. This is a story about Max Lohan.
Dressed in his lab coat.
Yeah, I wear this fairly often.
Max Lohan sits in his parents' old boiler room, converted into a lab.
I am in a boiler room right now.
And he ponders the future often.
The future that I imagine is the future, frankly, that we all imagine.
He wants to make the world a better place. And to do that, you need one single thing.
If you got energy, you got power, you have everything.
So to solve this problem, a few months ago, Max took the matter into his own hands and created this electromagnetic harvester out of a coffee can, some wire, 2 coils, and a spoon.
This cost me $14.
The harvester conducts radio waves, thermal and static energy, and turns it into electricity.
This wire takes the energy from the air. Down below here, we turn it from AC into DC.
So we take the device outside and wrap up Max's brother into a string of LED lights.
Bing!
A $14 invention was able to do that. So imagine the same harvester on a scale 20 times larger.
Okay, guys. So there we go. According to KTVN, a whiz kid with a powerful idea, and he is someone to know. It sounds great from the reporting, right? Free energy. He really did make this thing that just pulls energy out of thin air and can power LEDs. That would be incredible.
Well, there's no info about the maximum amount of energy. Is it so? It's electromagnetic energy, I would assume, based from the description.
From the description, there's nothing to tell, right? There's nothing to know.
Okay.
There's no. What is the amplitude, or what do they call that? Sorry, I'm not a scientist, guys. I'm not a physicist. I don't know things. But how much wattage do you actually get out of that thing? What can you power, right?
It reminds me of those old crystal radio kits that you could build at home. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the ones with like little crystals that act as an antenna where you can essentially create your own. Well, no, it's not a ham radio. It's a receiver. Radio. It's a receiver, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting you would say that, because that is, on the skeptical side, that is precisely what this device is being compared to.
I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying from what I remember from building one, it seems kind of.
Yep. You need an antenna of sorts, like where he says, this is where, what do you say? This is where the energy comes in. He's pointing to a wire, and then he, shows you where it goes in and converts from AC to DC, I guess. And then there's the output, and that's where he plugged in or at least attached the wires to the strip of LED lights. Which, by the way, LED lights, I think we all know this, guys, it takes very little energy to run an LED, a single LED light, or just a small strip of LED lights. It doesn't take a ton of power.
But yes, true. But even being the case, that's at the very least a cool way to power LED lights.
Oh yeah,
that's off
just
the
a
grid.
Can and a spoon and some wire. Let's do it. Let's go.
That's kind of cool.
The problem is the claim is by Max, and again, he's 13 years old, guys. Come on. But the claim by Max is that this device pulls in energy that is abundant, that is just flying around at any time. It was nighttime, by the way. So it wasn't solar powered, which is, by the way, the abundant source of energy that is always flying around. It's the sun. It's that radiation. And there's another video you can watch that we're not going to watch on the podcast, but I recommend you search it out. It's from 4 years ago from a great creator YouTube channel called Electro Boom. I guarantee if you see the face of the person who hosts that show, you will recognize him. He goes into it and really describes how this device is, in fact, exactly a crystal radio. And just demonstrates how you can build one and what it does and why it functions. But also why it wouldn't work, even if you built a huge one, why it wouldn't do much more.
It wouldn't scale. Question, Matt, before we go on, Krista is asking what happened.
Yes.
And also, I hope Electro Boom is nice to this person, because let's keep in mind, this is a 13-year-old child. They're obviously not out to bilk people. They're not trying to scam Northrop Grumman or something, right?
You're absolutely right. I don't want to speak for that channel or that video, but I would say, in my opinion, the biggest gripe that comes forward there is that Max Lohan ended up going and doing basically a tour of the world. He got on lists of things like Global Teen Leaders of 2017 at the We Are Family Foundation.
Sort of a Greta Thunberg type figure. I mean, in that, yeah.
In that moment, right? Yes. He went and gave major speeches at places like Nexus, which is a highly reputable science. I believe it's a foundation where they go and they give talks similar to TED. He was interviewed several other times on fairly big outlets. Basically, people saying, wow, this kid figured out free energy. This kid is Nikola Tesla. And
he's wearing the Tesla t-shirt in that channel too.
He is. And Max is so well-spoken, so he comes off as so intelligent. He can clearly solve a Rubik's Cube, which, come on, that's no simple feat.
In like 5 seconds, one of those like speed solves.
But there were some edits.
There's some edits.
Fair enough.
We cannot confirm. But he is so confident when he speaks. It reminds me of the skepticism episode we just did, where when you hear him talk, you tend to just believe him because he's just saying it. Yeah, this is how it is. This is what it is. Absolutely. And, if you have energy, then you've got power. And if you got power, you've got everything. And with this simple device, I can make power. So look, here's how it works. Here's the coil. Here's this. So your mind just kind of goes along with him on the ride. It's just strange that so many people immediately took that positive news, that potential win for humanity, and just said, yeah, let's go with it.
Also, I mean, speaking of news, he's on the news. They don't put quacks on the news, solving Rubik's Cubes, wearing lab coats in their parents' boiler room. I'm being a little jokey, but I mean, that's part of it. A kid like that, speaking the way he's speaking, demonstrating his levels of whether it be genius or savantism or whatever, you do kind of, how did I not know about this kid? Let's go. He's obviously got it cracked.
And I would say that's why his name and this concept is currently trending on, or maybe not currently anymore, but was trending on TikTok for quite a while.
The most well-researched of all social media.
Yes, because it does seem so positive for humanity overall. The kid is so confident and then he was all over the place in 2017. Seriously, 2016, 2017. And then we haven't heard much from him. There were a couple videos a while back. I don't know if you guys remember seeing this. It was sent to us via listener email at one point. It was a video of Max before I knew who he was. And he was making predictions of some sort about CERN.
Oh, that's right.
And the Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah, that's right.
He's in correct. Like a kitchen of some sort, or just in his house, I think. And he's talking about CERN and black holes and all this other stuff. And he's using the correct nomenclature, the correct vocabulary, and saying it so confidently that it feels kind of scary. And like he knows something more than everybody else, and it's going to happen. I would posit, and I cannot confirm this. I think he got a lot of attention really fast as a 13-year-old, and then there was probably quite a bit of blowback to that.
Sure.
And he just became a kid again, I think is probably what happened. So maybe avoided social media for quite a while, kind of went just dark a little bit when it comes to that stuff. And again, it's not because, in my opinion, that he's attempting to be a liar or to deceive a bunch of people. It's because he believed a thing, and maybe his family didn't know, they didn't understand what it actually was. Even the news presenter, the guy that went and interviewed him, didn't really understand. I wouldn't have understood unless I researched it. Right? So it's, I think maybe that's what happened. You can find him on Facebook, though.
Which you did.
Yeah, you can find, it was pretty easy, actually. And I'm wondering if this is actually his page or anyone that he knows even represents this page. But you can go to facebook.com/Max Loughan. And that's where I found that video that we just listened to.
Another great point. And also, Matt, I think we should take pains to note, this is not the same thing as doxing someone. Finding someone's Facebook page is not doxing someone. We are very well aware. This is a child. I love that you pointed this out. There are a couple of possibilities too. It could be that this kid is getting ready to apply for college, It's 2017, was a couple years ago, maybe a situation where his parents or he himself doesn't want to be associated with too much hubbub, right? Or to look like they're propagating bad science, which is, what he did, even if it's just a crystal radio, is still an amazingly impressive thing for a kid to figure out on their own. That's awesome. Also, the last thing I just want to point out, the National Invention Secrecy Act of 1951 is a true thing and it is used to suppress technology.
Oh, shoot. What if he really did figure it out and he just got a little visit? Oh,
it's a real thing.
It's like, hey, kid, we're going to need you to take it down a couple pegs here. Not necessarily going to disappear you, but strike a little fear of God in you.
Well, the innovation potentially here, guys, was the spoon attached at the top of his device. I don't know if you saw that.
Is no spoon, Matt. We've been over this.
The spoon bends
Maybe they want you to believe that there's no spoon, but there's got to be a spoon. And if there is a spoon...
Spoon bender.
This is brought to you by Big Spoon. Oh, my God.
He's the man with the spoony touch. No, have you guys seen the new Knives Out movie yet? Glass Onion?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, no spoilers. This is what it's about. Free energy, or something along the lines of free energy, using reclaimed seawater as a source, to replace, nuclear and electric and coal power and all of that. But then there's a twist. There's like many things. There's always positives and negatives. So nothing's perfect or free.
And to that end, thank you so much for calling in, Krista, with that question. We hope this helps a little bit. You can find more information. It's out there. I hope you don't get any more viruses on your phone. That's not good. And I'm not sure why that was happening. You can find this stuff on Facebook and on YouTube. And no viruses on my computer that I'm aware of. I guess we'll see. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
National Invention Secrecy Act, 1951.
And we've returned with one more piece of listener correspondence. This one coming from one of my favorite nicknames of recent memory, Cyborg Penguin. And it was in response to our overpopulation episode, and specifically to a comment that I made about why someone would or would not have a child in the event of losing a child. And it was just kind of an off-the-cuff remark where we were both, I think, Ben, you and I were both kind of considering what the drive to have a child might be in the event of losing a child versus it being such a traumatic experience that maybe you would not want to ever put yourself in the position to go through that again, and maybe you wouldn't have a child. Cyborg has this to say: "Hey, Noel, regarding your comment on replacing a kid with another, you are getting it wrong. The logic isn't that you wait for a kid to die to have another. You have a lot in a short span of time to have more chances of having at least a handful who survive. The appearance of a healthcare technology, or the improvement of healthcare technology in the Andes region, upset this. And now people have fewer children. My mother has 12 siblings, between full and half siblings. And that was basically because in an agrarian economy, more kids are more potential farm hands. And half of them might not make it. So you better be sure to spawn a lot of them. The Peruvian demographic explosion of the 50s to 70s was in part because of this. You need at least a couple of generations before you change the practices of the people. So from the 40s to the 60s, agrarian families with a lot of kids who made it to adulthood was a thing. Love the program today. Best of luck to you and the guys." So I think this is a very valid and interesting perspective from a part of the world maybe we don't consider, or a type of lifestyle, in terms of farming, and maybe an older mode of thinking around this topic than maybe still exists today. And I think Cyborg Penguin addressed that beautifully in terms of it takes some time to see a change in behavior, over the course of generations. We certainly know that in days when healthcare, which was not a thing, like even as far back as, the Dark Ages and the medieval times, life expectancy was very short, and often children would die in childbirth or die very, very young. And so the idea was to have as many as possible to make sure that bloodline was carried on. And I wasn't really thinking about that in terms of more modern examples. And I think this is a really good one. You know, the idea of in the 40s and 50s, this notion of we got to have as many as we can because healthcare wasn't good and some kids might not survive in perhaps more harsh and dangerous, frankly, farming conditions. And it was sort of a calculation of like, you know, we got to have more kids so that the farm can be staffed, you know, with family. And then also the family farm can be passed down to generations, you know, to carry on.
Yeah, well said. And thank you so much, Cyborg Penguin. This is something that I believe we've also explored in some previous episodes. The overpopulation fact and fiction it's red meat for a lot of people for a lot of the wrong reasons, right? When you hear the different arguments, it gets, as we said, very weird and hypocritical in the halls of power. People will say, a lot of folks should stop having children. And then they'll say, but my kids are fine, right? But that doesn't apply to me. Same problem with the corruption in the Chinese government regarding the one-child policy. If you come from an agrarian background, then you realize there is a calculus to this, right? Again, most people are incredibly intelligent. One thing we did miss, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Noel, is that there are some pretty compelling arguments that have come out that overall the global population of human beings may be stabilizing. I think we made a pretty good case that the growth itself, the Malthusian arguments, have proven incorrect. But what we are seeing is really a problem of inequality, of access to education, to resources, to healthcare. And that access, that problem, has been so heavily propagandized and politicized that people are finding themselves in a weird situation where they're supporting parasites at the very top of the financial ecosystem. I think I'm word salading a little, but all to say, yeah, everything Cyborg Penguin is saying, 100% agree.
Well, look, I wasn't a part of that conversation, guys. I'm sorry I missed it. I don't know. So wait, are we saying overpopulation isn't a problem, or at least as big of a problem as I feel like it is? Because I feel like the more human beings, the more resources you got to use, which means more trees cut down, more fresh water used, more plastic, more lithium, everything.
I think this perspective also speaks to a thing we talked about in the episode where it kind of course corrects to some degree over time. But again, it takes time for that correction to be visible. Whether it be because of changes in generational thinking around having children, or Ben, you could speak to this, I'm sure, other factors as well, that will potentially cause overpopulation as a massive spike to really have us, worried, sort of to even out.
The phrase course correction, let's explore that for a second. So the real problem with humanity's population growth, which has been on a continued clip ever since the Black Death. Human beings took that one on the chin, and then they just said, let's reproduce as much as we can. The real problem is one of logistics. It's one of expectation of quality of life. Consider for a moment that the average person needs somewhere between 3 to 4 liters of water a day. And a lot of people use way more than that, right? And a lot of people are not getting that. I would note that if you look at the world as it stands now, 8+ billion people, all sorts of terrible things are happening due to previous generations, right? And the way they treated resource allocation. Now, this population of 8 billion people has to contend with the sins of the past while also asking, how do we distribute these resources? Or in my case, how do they distribute these resources? And that's where the issue comes in. It's very easy to be a billionaire or a tycoon at Davos Economic Forum and say, here's what we do to make everything right. But it's very difficult to be someone who says, I need to feed my kids. My kids are part of my, not just my family, but my livelihood. We all work this land together. That's the great danger, I think, is the disconnect. Now, would planet Earth be better with far fewer people on it? I'm just going to be a jerk here and say, yes, that's objectively true. But also the idea of painting it as a crisis situation as a means of advancing one's own wealth extraction or resource extraction ideologies, that's dangerous, it's misleading, and the people who are saying that are smart enough to know what they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. It's my own biases.
Did I just hack skepticism? Did I sound too confident in my BS?
No, not at all. Whatever. No. But just when I'm thinking about that standard of living, at least in many parts of the West, I have this image of these open lithium mines where there are, tens of thousands of human beings attempting to extract tiny amounts of lithium individually so that they can support those families that you're talking about, so that the families in largely Western cultures can thrive with their phones and stuff, right? So maybe it really is just, it's kind of, I think I heard you guys say the phrase on the episode, eat the rich situation. Like, maybe we really do just need to cull the wealthy people, which I would, all of us, I think I would include myself in there when it comes to just people who use too much. But
break the wheel. Yeah.
Yeah. Dang.
It's difficult though, because again, the course correction, this is a thing folks often don't like to talk about, but humanity is simply another example of another animal on Earth. And as you can see, historically, when a population exceeds a certain threshold, nature itself will correct for that to retain its favorite thing, which is
equilibrium. You evil ambulance or whatever you were, fire truck.
I get a lot of non-consensual Ubers. I'm just going to be honest. But the point holds. The problem here is one of the tragedy of the commons. For any fellow nerds out there, how do we handle a public good, right? And the other issue is one of cooperation. How can you get 8+ billion people to look out for the greater good and somehow prevent the most powerful of those 8 billion people from doing some weird scheme to make them their own lives, quote unquote, better at the expense of others? And Cyborg Penguin, I think what you're talking about here is a brilliant observation that mileage varies for people having these experiences. When we talk a little bit about replacement rate, right? For a population to remain stable, reproductive pairs produce 2.1 children. That accounts for mortality, accounts for everything such that the population will be stable. When you hear global statistics, right? November 15th, 2022, the 8th billion person is born. I think we wish them happy birthday in an episode. Happy birthday. Sorry, if we knew you were coming, we would have cleaned the place up a little. But what we see there is that this population growth globally, that statistic can be misleading because it is not an even growth, right? Places like India or Nigeria, right? That those places, people are going to have more than 2.1 kids. Places like Japan, the replacement rate is no longer being reached. There are some pretty compelling arguments that globally, at a certain point, population will decline. And I think, Noel, one thing that was really personal for us and for a lot of listeners was the conversation about why people may or may not decide to have a child after losing a child. And that is something that that's something I really appreciate about what you're saying, Cyborg Penguin, is that is a personal decision, but also sometimes people in a very real way feel it is a necessary thing to do, that one must do this, that one must put their feelings aside. And that's simply the reality of the world.
That can be driven by reasons of economics, whether it like he's talking about in terms of needing those hands to get the work done, and also stacking the deck in a way that you in a time where maybe you might lose more than one child, for various reasons. Or maybe there are religious reasons where it's about, spreading the gospel or whatever it might be, and that's your responsibility to do that. So you do put your feelings aside. I think I was coming from it in my comments, as a parent. If I lost a child, I don't think I would ever want to put myself in that position again, because it would be such a heartbreaking thing. So I was coming at it from a completely emotional standpoint when I made that comment, or when I posited that might be a perspective shared by others. Because to your point, Ben, it is very personal, and there are a lot of different reasons.
And this is something, Matt, I know we both, actually all of us listening along as well, the Overpopulation episode, really wanted your perspective on as well. It's an incredibly difficult conversation. We have a lot of people with us today who have perhaps had to terminate a pregnancy, right? Or had a pregnancy that didn't go to term for any number of reasons. How would you react to that, the statement, from Noel, from your side, the idea that it is a personal decision and it can be, there aren't really words for it, like how should one of our fellow conspiracy realists attempt to approach that situation?
It's the same thing as like asking yourself, how would you act in an emergency situation? You hope that you would act a certain way, but given the actual realities of it, you might not act that way, that you think or that you wish you would.
I see that. One lucky difference between those situations is that if you want to trust yourself in an emergency situation, the best thing to do is to repeatedly drill and train such that it can hopefully become reflexive muscle memory automatic. And you don't have that ability in the situation where you lose a life like that. I don't know. I was sorry. I wanted to interject that, but Matt, what are your thoughts?
I want to know your thoughts. So why don't you write to us? You can find us on social media. We are Conspiracy Stuff on many outlets like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. We are Conspiracy Stuff Show on Instagram and TikTok. Please, please, please check those out. Follow us if you will. You can interact with us there, for sure. You can also interact with us in other ways.
That's right. You can give us a telephone call, 1-833-STDWYTK, where you will hear Ben's voice inviting you to leave a message. You will have 3 minutes to leave said message. Tell us anything you want. Also, give yourself a cool nickname, and you may well hear your very voice appear on this program. This segment, this listener mail, weekly listener mail episode. Just make sure to let us know if that's okay, and if you want us to hold anything back.
And if you don't want to do phone or social or any of that kind of stuff, maybe you threw your phone in the ocean. Good on you. What about sending a good old-fashioned email? We like those. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.